We have some of the numbers, like now we're just getting close to 200,000 people reached our platform. We've facilitated about £20 million in funding.
That's Ren, CEO and founder of Lightning Reach, a tech for good startup.
So we now work across these sectors of local authorities, housing associations, utilities, alongside the charities.
Ren saw a clear problem and wanted to do something about it. It all started with a small grant.
COVID hit. And I think it only hit me at that point in time that there were lots of people financially struggling in the UK. I'm not an engineer, so I can't build myself. I think I applied for an Innovate UK grant. I was quite lucky that we managed to secure an Innovate UK grant that just gave us a little bit of funding, enough to build out our MVP.
Their growth in the B2B impact space is incredible.
Yeah, we're now a team of 14, most of us in the UK, but we also have people based in Lithuania, Barcelona, Georgia, Amsterdam, which is quite exciting.
You can hear our journey so far, but there's also big plans coming.
Ideally, globally as well in the longer term. I think there are lots of people around the world that need support. I don't think I really knew. I liked horses and animals, so I thought maybe a vet at some point or a jockey, but I had no idea. My sister actually was clear on that. She wanted to be a millionaire when she grew up. Good on her.
What kind of decision did you then take though? If you weren't sure what you wanted to be, where did you go to study, or what did you take next?
Yeah, I think I started down quite a conventional route. Like in Singapore, people tend to go down the route of being either doctors or lawyers or accountants. So initially I studied a bit of science. I did research in a lab and realized that science and probably being a doctor wouldn't be cut out for me. So I ended up going to the more business side of the world. I think I was honestly quite a generalist. So I went to university, wanted to study economics because it's pretty broad and that would allow me time to figure out what to do. I was also supposed to be a scholar with the Singapore government. So that was initially with the Foreign Service, which would have bonded me to the government for 6 years. And I think been quite interesting because that's another typical route that people take if you're lucky enough to sort of get offered an overseas scholarship, then it gives you funding to go to school and you join the government after that. So I started that, decided not to pursue that route. When I was nearly graduating from university, got an offer from a management consulting firm at Bain and sort of started going into management consulting because that was sort of helping solve problems and trying out a range of industries and things like that.
I did economics as well, mainly for the same reason of it delaying decisions. Like, from economics, I can go and do anything, right?
Yeah.
And once you're at Bain, how did you enjoy it? How did you find that experience?
I think it was great learning, and I really love my colleagues. Like some of my friends today are still, my best friends are from Bain. But I think after doing it for a few years, I realized a little bit was sort of about working with big corporations to help them get richer. And I wanted to do something with more meaning and impact. And I think that was probably the main turning point for going down the social impact route, which I'm working in today. I think Bain, we dabbled a little bit, like did a bit of pro bono consulting with charities and social enterprises, and I realized I liked that quite a lot. So after Bain, I went to business school to sort of figure out how to sort of take that next step of having a more meaningful career. And then I tried working with a social enterprise in Tanzania. That was quite fun. It was like a fast-growing off-grid electric startup that was helping people get electricity when they normally wouldn't have it. And also with the Rockefeller Foundation, which was a nonprofit that was helping with a range of programs. So I think through that, I realized that I still quite like the fast pace of being in the business world and sort of seeing change happen versus sometimes a much longer term approach with some foundations and charities. So then I went into Bima, which is a microinsurance and health business. It was sort of one of these social enterprises that had grown to a significant scale, was helping something like 15 million people around the world get access to insurance, but paying using their mobile phones. And that was really interesting. It was sort of a chance to try out being in different markets, work with people on the ground and sort of launch a market myself in Malaysia. So very, very interesting stuff. But that sort of was the gateway, I suppose, into the financial inclusion space.
So, I mean, obviously working at Bain, like you said, is where you're advising somebody else on how to do something, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're at Beamer, you're in charge of that and you're leading that for your own like company, right?
Yeah.
How did you find that experience, like comparison there, right, of where being in-house versus consulting on it, and did you enjoy it more?
I think definitely. In-house, you sort of actually get to take action and see the real impact. I think from a consulting perspective, it is interesting, get a big picture, you get to influence, but a lot of it is like making PowerPoint slides, making things look good as compared to making decisions and doing real things on the ground. I think even within Beamer, it's not to say that I got to sort of do everything on my own. We were working in a context of having sort of a global head office with a regional office and then local markets. So when I first joined Beamer, actually a lot of that first role was also working with the different markets and working on partnerships across those places, but sort of navigating that sort of dynamic between being in a local market and also doing things that align with what the head office wants. So it's not to say we could go out there and just like make all the decisions on our own, but it was definitely interesting. Like it was exciting when I started working the Malaysia market. We had about 6 weeks to launch it and, you know, be having to set up the business, get regulatory approval, get a partnership up and running and get products into the hands of people within that timeline was definitely really exciting. And I think created that spark of, oh, actually, it's quite fun to be able to work through a few different topics and like create something from scratch.
So you mentioned it as well. So like from your journey so far, you must have done pretty well at university to get into Bain. So Bain is very prestigious. And then you have that consulting job, which is like, so many people seek, right? And you then went into do an MBA again. Like you've done all these different things, which many people want to do. And from there, you're now looking at, okay, could I go and do this myself? And how was that as an identity shift for you? Was it something which was crazy? Okay, I'm going to go on this different path now and build myself. Or was it a more gradual?
I think it was probably a bit more gradual. I think starting Light and Reach and starting my own company was a bit almost like random. I stumbled across the problem. I didn't sort of like plan out this career to say I'm going to start a business at some point. But yeah, I think I was very lucky to sort of like get into places like Bain, get some of that training, and then realizing that there's something in me that doesn't just like to sort of work within constraints and sort of likes to come up with new things and try them out, and prompted me to do that. But yeah, it was a bit gradual in the sense that I sort of pivoted from consulting to looking at how do I do something with more purpose and impact, and that was still within the constraint of working within a bigger organization like Beamer. So I kind of kept going backwards from like bigger companies into smaller ones. Because after Beamer, I went to Railser, which was a fintech startup that was about Series A, and that was a very different stage again. Beamer had like a couple of thousand people employed, and Railser had 30 when I joined, and then sort of took a step back from that and starting Light and Reach, which had no one else when I started that.
So you said you came across a problem by almost luck, right?
Yeah.
So what was the problem that you discovered that you really wanted to solve?
Yeah, so COVID happened and I realized that a lot of people were struggling to get support. So there were places like my local coffee shop that had to shut down, or people like my neighbors that lost their jobs, had to go on furlough when COVID hit. And I think it only hit me at that point in time that there were lots of people financially struggling in the UK. I had worked in emerging markets. So I had initially thought that was a bigger problem there and like I could do more there in the future. But then I realized there's sort of two sides to the problem. Firstly, there are individuals that struggle, don't know where to turn to, and then sort of have these complicated application forms to fill out, or they have to ring people up, tell their story and repeat that time and again. And it would be great to make that whole journey easier for someone that want support to get it at the time they need it, rather than go through this whole pain of trying to find out what's out there and apply and repeat their story time and again. And then on the other side, when COVID hit, Rails at the time, we started working with a charity that wanted to give out emergency funding out to individuals. So I realized there's also the other side where organizations are trying to help, but they don't always have processes that work for them. It can be time consuming. When I was at Rails, we solved for the payments bit of like getting money out to people faster. But then talking to charities, I realized a lot of the problem comes even before that, when they're trying to reach people that need their help, when they're trying to verify and figure out who to help or who not to, and process the application and paperwork. So then I thought that's an opportunity to solve that gap. I've worked in tech and fintech a bit, and I could see how using technology could improve the lives of people. If we could sort of bring everything into one place, make it easier for individuals to find and apply for support, but also for organizations to save time, so they're not spending lots of time on admin and trying to do the paperwork, but actually helping as many people as they can.
And obviously, like, that work you've done there has gone on to help so many people. And it has to start somewhere, right? So you've got this idea, you can see its problem, you know you want to solve it.
Yeah.
And you've worked in like different organizations and different tech companies. Once you had the idea, what was the first step you took to try and make that reality?
Yeah, I think when I left Rails Bank, I sort of knew the problem a little bit. What actually happened is one of the charities that I had met reached out sort of saying, we want to do a little project. We want to understand how we can improve our application process. So I sort of did that as a bit of an individual consulting piece to understand the problem a little bit better and provide some solutions. I think then the next step was looking at if there's something we can build to solve this problem. Then I think the challenge that often you face as a startup is there are so many problems you could solve. There's a huge vision you want to build towards. And as you say, it's like just me at the time. So start thinking about, what do I need to actually make it a reality? So what's the first bit of product that I could build to sort of validate the idea and sort of get a first customer? And who do I need on the team to be able to make that happen? I'm not an engineer, so I can't build myself. I think nowadays there are more sort of low-code tools available, but a couple of years ago it wasn't so easy. I applied for an Innovate UK grant. I was quite lucky. There were a few people that were just helping me out during COVID, who were on furlough, had time. So we managed to secure an Innovate UK grant that just gave us a little bit of funding, enough to build out our MVP, which was basically a bit of tech that uses open banking to help support the application process. So people could apply, charities could use open banking, which they didn't necessarily know about, to get financial details of someone and then process that more quickly than sort of gathering reams of bank statements and paperwork.
So you mentioned though about the grant as well, that kickstarting and being able to help you to get the people you needed to start making this reality.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in this sort of business, they don't necessarily think about grants as much as they should. And how did you, one, know about the grants, but also then think about, okay, how do I process this? Which is the right grant for me? How did you go through that process to try and get that capital?
Oh, it's a good question. I feel like I don't really remember how I found out about it. I do think I was quite lucky in the sense that Innovate UK had these grants that came out during COVID. So those were outside of their usual cycle. But I think they were announced and I came across them and just thought, oh, this looks interesting. We might as well give it a try. I didn't really sort of go through the research of saying what are all the grants out there that we could apply to. So it's a little bit more organic in that way. But I do think it would be worth, if someone is starting out a business, taking a look at what grants are available. I think there's someone, Esme Verity, that has a database of grants that could be worth checking out. Because those are useful. And I think grants are helpful at the point where you don't have any traction, because then you're not trying to pitch to an investor saying, I've got this great idea, but nothing yet to make it a reality.
Yes, that's considered capital by Esme Verity.
Yes.
It's really good. And I think even now, so people who are probably watching this and people who are doing different things like looking at businesses, they're probably may start getting ads for this stuff as well. And sometimes it's a case of, like you said, you saw it in your feed or something like that, is that you just have to actually go follow through and take the ad, right? So you had a potential, you could have just skimmed over it, but like, oh, there's no point in me applying, right?
Yeah.
But it's just that decision to actually, no, I can do this, let me try,
Yeah.
makes all the difference, right? And then obviously because you did that, that then got you the money. But there'll be many other people who would have just scrolled past it.
Yeah, it's quite easy. I think sometimes you look at the rates of acceptance for Innovate UK and can get very disheartened and be like, well, there's no point because they only take, I think it was like 2 or 3% of the last round of applications. But I think sometimes it is worth just giving things a try because you never know what comes out of them.
And obviously with the grant as well, you still have to be very scrappy at the beginning, right? To make sure you're getting the most you can out of that money.
Yeah.
How did you think about that? Like, how are you thinking, okay, this is the best way I can use the money just to get, did you set yourself goals or milestones, or how did you think about that?
Yeah, I think for Innovate UK, we did have to sort of put together a bit of a project plan to say this is what we're going to do. But I think in the heart of it was how do we get a product out as soon as possible and test it and get someone to buy it. Or actually, to be fair, even get someone to buy it before you have the whole thing built. So that's why we're quite focused with the scope of our initial MVP. We wanted to do a lot more when we started out, but we just thought about sort of what is one bit that we can do that solves one part of the problem that we know well and start from there. And then after that, we could sort of evolve it once we had gotten our first couple of customers on board. We could sort of reach out to the wider sector, get feedback, and then start building out the rest of the product. But yeah, the first bit was very much, we don't have a lot of money. Let's see, can we build something in like 2-3 months, get that beta version live, and then test it and continue iterating.
Oh, hello. Quick interruption to let you know a bit more about Bay HQ. We're the community for high growth Asian heritage entrepreneurs, operators, and investors in the UK. You can join us totally free at thebayhq.com/join. There you'll get our CEO structure in your inbox every week, which is content, events, and opportunities. You can also get access to our free Startup Fundamentals course by joining. Let's get back to the show. And you said you've done some work for some charities at this point as well.
Yeah.
How are you finding other customers or people to try this beta?
Yeah, so we started with the first charity that I mentioned that had sort of come to me, and we were then introduced to the Association of Charitable Organizations. So they are a membership body for other charities that give grants to individuals, and they've been super helpful. I think it's great when you speak to sort of people who are connected in the industry, because then they were able to sort of invite us to a couple of the events. I think we got to speak at one of the events a few months in, and that even though it was very much conceptual, we've done this little beta, anyone want to test it, and we're thinking about building this thing next. It meant we had sort of an audience of people that could be in our target market to speak with.
And obviously you've done similar work before at different places, but getting that feedback from the customers, how was that process of, because obviously there's some iteration at early points and things like that.
Yeah.
How did you find that part of like, are you building the right thing? And you said you streamlined and you cut down what you're trying to build. How are you making those decisions?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most like important, fun and messy parts of the process. Is not always clear cut because customers don't necessarily tell you exactly what they want. They tell you their problems, and then you sort of figure out how to shape that into a solution that solves those problems. And I think it was sort of being open, talking to as many people as possible, and like using those insights to help shape our product. That was important. We got a bit more structured along the way. So when we first started, it was just sort of casual conversations. And then as we were sort of building the next iteration of our product, which is the Lightning Reach portal as you see it today in a way, then we ran a bit more of a human-centered design process. So we got a group of our potential customers involved in different parts of the journey, from sort of talking to them about their problems to actually getting them in workshops, showing them, going through the ideation process together so that we could sort of prioritize some of these ideas, and then showing prototypes and sort of like refining it based on their feedback before we had a beta version that they could test. So we sort of went step by step and I guess brought them along the journey first, which maybe is quite unique. I think it wasn't something that a lot of tech startups always do. And it's something that charities don't typically get asked to be involved in it at that stage. Often charities sort of get a finished product at the end saying, do you want to buy this?
So you mentioned we there a few times, right? And you said how you started off as just you.
Yeah.
How did that team grow, and how did you decide who's the next hire and how to grow that team out?
Yeah. We're now a team of 14, which kind of blows my mind. It's still small, but it is a lot more than we started. So the first couple of hires, one was one of our volunteers that sort of became our first employee, and I had a couple of other friends of friends that came in. So I think how I thought about my early hires was sort of first having someone that could build the product. I'm not technical. I can't actually code. So definitely really important. And I was lucky to have a friend of friend come and join us very early on to do that. Bookie, the person I mentioned, joined us, our first operations manager, because again, I don't think operations is my strength. So it was getting someone that can come in and run things, run processes quite early on. And Robbie as well, who was a UX designer. So it's the four of us to start with. And I think it was very much a question of what do we actually need to get off the ground, and who's going to sort of complement the gaps that I have and do the things that I can't do or can't do well. And that's probably the rough approach as we've continued to scale, getting more people in. I think we later on got a first sales hire, which is really helpful. I think it's helpful to do founder-led sales at the beginning, because you need to understand the problem, you need to understand the customers. But Dave, who came in about, a year and a half ago now, has been also a game changer in the sense that he actually knows how to do sales well. He has a natural way of like talking to customers. And I think it sort of cascades, because if you get more customers, then you need more people in ops to like support them, or customer success to onboard them. And then you need more tech people to build and make sure you're keeping customers happy and sort of looking ahead. So it now becomes this balancing act, if they were in the middle of it now, of like being, okay, who do you need to hire next? What's the biggest pain point? And if we grow this part of the business, then what do we need to do with another part of the team to sort of balance things out and make sure no one is like dying in the process.
And you've done it fully remote as well, right?
Yeah, because we started during COVID, there was no point getting an office. And I think the benefit has been we could hire people that came from anywhere in the world. So most of us in the UK, but we also have people based in Lithuania, Barcelona, Georgia, Amsterdam, which is quite exciting. I think it is really nice to have that flexibility where you're not constrained by a specific location. It also means you have to think about how to bring people together, how to still create a strong enough culture when you're working fully remote. But I like it.
And obviously now you've been going for several years, you've done really well. What were you most proud of? What do you think the biggest wins have been for Lightning Reach?
I think it's really the impact on people that is amazing to see. Like, we have some of the numbers, like now we're just getting close to 200,000 people reached our platform. We've facilitated about £20 million in funding out to individuals that need it. So it's quite nice to see we've reached a certain scale. But I think what also really strikes me is when I talk to real people, hear their stories of how they've been able to use Lightning Reach, maybe find a grant or find support they never heard of. And that then enabled them to pay their rent, get the bills. So yeah, it's the real life stories that are amazing to me. I remember there was one of our early users, Luke. He came and actually spoke at our event, and that was amazing to hear firsthand from him. He was sort of talking about how he had been street homeless with a pregnant wife and didn't know what to do when he got signposted to Lightning Reach, signed up and got housing and support from the Royal British Legion as well as the RAF Benevolent Fund. And that was sort of life-changing in the sense that he went from street homeless to having a house that he could bring up his new baby in. And he later on got a job with a council. And I think it just shows how much of a difference it can make to someone to get the right amount of help they need at the right time.
No, it's amazing to hear. And one thing that's interesting too, because you mentioned how you started off very lean in terms of what you're targeting with the product. And what you just mentioned there, we've been able to do in terms of help people get housing and all these different things. Who do you serve today? How's the product iterated over time?
Yeah, we brought it out a bit. So that I guess we work with a wider range of sectors now. We started working just with charities that give grants to individuals, and we continue to work with today. But what we've realized is it's a cross-sector problem, and individuals need to get help from a range of places. They're the charity or their local council or their utility provider. So we now work across these sectors of local authorities, housing associations, utilities, alongside the charities. And we have about 2,500 support schemes on our portal that individuals can access, which is a bit broader and holistic, more holistic than what we started out with. I think we've also been building out the product functionality so that people don't sort of only go through a small step in applying for support, but they can use the Lightning Reach portal throughout their journey of finding what support they're eligible for, getting matched to that, and then being able to apply for the different support schemes directly. And we're sort of thinking or working on sort of the next step as well, which is getting some of that support directly into the hands of the people.
Awesome. And obviously, this journey is like the amount of people being able to impact, all these different things are amazing. And along that journey, what do you think the biggest lessons have been? If someone's listening to this right now and it's like, I want to be like you, what are some of the lessons you can maybe share with them so that they can shortcut some of that hard times you must have had along the way?
Yeah, I think one learning is sort of expect the ups and downs. I don't think I expected as many ups and downs and gray areas as when I started the journey. I thought it would be a bit black and white. You start something, you test, see if it works. If it doesn't work, then all right, it's fine. Go and do something else. If it works, great. It would just sort of take off. But I hadn't realized how much of a messy middle there is, and how many constant ups and downs there are. And I think it's quite difficult sometimes to like deal with that mentally and emotionally. So probably one lesson is just knowing that, to just keep talking to customers, listening to their needs, because that's been so critical to how we've been able to build our product and end up supporting customers. I think it is common advice, but it's very natural to have a tendency to think about what's a perfect product you want to build, and sort of work on that and sort of iterate on that before talking to customers. So just say, remember to like be brave and go out and talk to customers, show them something, even if it's not perfect.
With those ups and downs, how have you dealt with them yourself? What have you used any techniques or anything that you've done that's been able to help you to keep going and keep pushing forwards?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably like still learning and figuring that out. To be honest, I think there are sort of moments of burnout or moments of like things happening in your personal life, which also then affects the business along with the business ups and downs. I think one of the learnings has been to celebrate the wins. I tend to go quite hard on myself, and I think that's hard for the team too. If I forget to celebrate the wins when everyone's working really hard, then it means the ups aren't celebrated as much as they should, and that means the downs are harder. So that's something I'm trying to be much more mindful of. I think secondly, also having a bit of a network of other people that you can talk to, founders, advisors, when things go wrong, so that you're reminded it's not just you. Things like that happen all the time, and you can sort of get back up from the lows. That's also been really helpful. And I think thirdly, just sort of being able to take time out and step back. Sort of when I first started, the first year was like very much almost 24/7, like thinking about the business all the time and going very hard. And that's a fun and that. But I'm lucky now to have a team in place and be in a position where I can sort of take a step back, go on holidays and come back, and, things are still running.
On that part as well, as you mentioned, you were able to now take holidays and to be able to have those things in place. How are you able to get that transition right? Because obviously at some point you were like, I can't go on holiday. But what enabled you to now feel comfortable that, yes, I can do this? Yeah,
I think just really having a great team in place. I'm so grateful for them. So, for example, my COO, she does like honestly much more than I do for the business at this point. She runs loads of the operations and some product stuff. So I think we have a bit of a leadership team in place across sort of operations, technical and commercial, which means that each of these areas actually has an owner, and I'm in a sort of privileged position of being able to dip in and out rather than having to own any of them specifically and sort of just step in to help out or be a sounding board for some of them. But it's an interesting position, I think, to be in, of like figure out where you delegate, where you step back, and things like that.
Mitch is why you took the grant right at the beginning from Innovate UK. How has the other funding journey been? Have you been mainly bootstrapped since then, or have you been able to keep the momentum?
Yeah, we've had a hodgepodge. So we had a combination of grants and equity funding and sort of other types of funding come in. So I guess to summarize, we started with the Innovate UK grant. We then applied for and got into the Techstars Accelerator program, which gave us our sort of next tranche of funding. And we also got another grant from Nesta, which was in partnership with one of the charities that we started working with. We then raised an equity round, which was about £1 million, and that had a combination of impact investors, so the likes of Joseph Rowntree Foundation, Barrow Cadbury Trust, and Big Issue Invest, as well as a bunch of other angel investors. And I think that's a great group to have involved because they're all very mission aligned. They're sort of investors that want to see the returns, but they also want to see the impact we're making. So yeah, that was in the sort of like third quarter of 2023, which is the last round we raised. We're lucky enough to be cash positive in the last financial year, which means that for now, we don't, thank you. We'll see how it goes because we're growing our team. But yeah, it means that we haven't had to raise again since then. But it was definitely hard, like trying to get all these bits of funding in along the way, especially the million raised in 2023.
I think especially in the social impact space, it can be quite difficult because on one hand, you've got the mission what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
But then also in order to get the funding, you need to make sure that you're not just saying, give us some money because we're going to do good. It's got to be, we're going to make you money too.
Yeah.
And how are you able to get that message across to bring those investors on board?
Yeah, I think that's a common misconception. And also because we have our website's lightandreach.org. So a lot of times we would talk to investors and they'll say, are you just a charity? Or assume that we are a charity. So we realize quite early on that we do have to be clear about the messaging. Could probably have even done that even better along the way. But I think it was being clear about how we make money, how we can be a sustainable business, and how we can scale. Because our business model is we partner with organizations, we save them time, we help them reach the right people, and we help their clients discover support. And actually, that's a real business case for the partners that we work with to invest in a product like ours. So it's not about sort of charging lots of individuals that are struggling the cost to access the product, but having a B2B business model. So when we're talking to investors, was making that clear that we have a business model that is in place, is already generating revenue, and that we have a path to scale that further, because it's not just about saying we can sort of get to that first million. It's sort of demonstrating that there is a path to grow significantly beyond that as well.
So on that note there, what's the dream for this? Where do you hope someday the Light and Reach will get to?
Yeah, good question. I think ideally we want to be in a place where in the next few years we're helping millions of people access support, initially in the UK, but ideally globally as well in the longer term. I think there are lots of people around the world that need support, and that can be financial, but it can be more holistic as well. And we are this platform that helps them to get there end to end, from like finding support to actually getting it in their hands and doing that across all the different pathways that they could get help from. So that's the dream.
And what we're doing now, so we're 250 episodes into this podcast now, right? So
it's a lot of episodes.
If you come back in, and so we're saying 200 episodes later, you can come back. And if we were to play this back, right? So if I say, when you're sitting here next time, what would you love to have said that you were able to achieve in the next 2 years?
Ooh, good question. We'd love to be in a place where we have reached 1 million people. We've grown our revenues significantly. So we're sort of multi-million in revenues, and we are starting to look at other markets. And we have a happy team in place to deliver all that.
So thanks so much for sharing your story. We're going to get to quick 5 questions now.
Sure.
So first one is, who do you think are 3 Asians in Britain doing incredible work, and you'd have to shout them out?
Yeah, I really liked Ranha Vyas from one of your podcasts. I think her story of, I haven't met her, but her story of how she sort of reached 20 million revenues and then went down to 0 and managed to start all over again is incredibly inspiring. Second, Ashish Goyal. He is the first blind trader on Wall Street and the first Wharton student that was actually blind. I met him as an alumni a while ago, and I think it's incredible what he's managed to achieve given the challenges he's had to overcome. Definitely worth having a look. And Jenny Chong, who's one of my advisors and investors, just an incredible person. She knows data, she knows AI, she helps and supports startups, but she also has this brilliant portfolio career where she's helping with different charities and arts and sciences. So yeah, always inspired by her.
Awesome. And then if you want to find out more about you and what you're building, where do they go to?
They can go to lightningreach.org. It's LIGHTNING. I realized that a lot of people actually spell lightning reach wrongly, so we get all typos. Like half the advice we get are like lightening or lighting or some of the variations. So I just
need to just buy the other domains. Yeah.
Yeah. We should probably buy a few more actually. We've also got lightningreach.com, so you will get directed to that if you put in lightningreach.com. But yeah, like if you want to find out more, get in touch with us, then always happy to chat, especially if you're sort of working in the space of helping people access financial support, or you're working in any of these sectors that help people in some way. We're always up for partnerships and collaboration.
So if people listening now can help you, is that the best way, or is there any other way they can help?
Yeah, I think if there's sort of anything interesting in terms of partnerships that you'd like to discuss, feel free to reach out through our website. They can also help by following us on LinkedIn. It's always sort of nice to grow the audience and story. So if there's something else that comes up, then we can be in touch.
So thanks so much for coming on. Any final words?
No, not that I can think of, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.